I'm Aaliyah, 32 years old, and for the past decade, I poured my heart and soul into Sterling Innovations. I started as a junior marketing associate, fresh out of college, brimming with optimism and big dreams. The bustling energy of our Chicago headquarters felt like home, a place where I believed talent truly spoke for itself. My early years at Sterling were a whirlwind of learning and growth. I embraced every challenge, working late nights to master new strategies and exceed expectations. My campaigns consistently delivered impressive results, earning me early promotions and the respect of my immediate team. I genuinely believed in the company's mission. I quickly climbed the corporate ladder, moving from associate to manager, then to senior manager within 5 years. Each step felt earned, a testament to my dedication and innovative thinking. I was proud of my achievements, especially as a young Black woman navigating a predominantly white corporate landscape. My colleagues often praised my work ethic and my ability to connect with diverse audiences. I felt like I was making a real difference, not just for Sterling, but also for representation within the industry. There were moments of pride, seeing my ideas come to life and contribute to the company's success. I remember one particular project, a major product launch that was struggling to gain traction. I proposed a bold, culturally relevant campaign that initially met with skepticism from some senior leaders. But I pushed for it, presented compelling data, and eventually got the green light. The campaign was a resounding success, breaking sales records and earning Sterling significant media attention. It was a pivotal moment for my career, solidifying my reputation as a strategic thinker and a valuable asset. I felt invincible, like nothing could stop my upward trajectory. My direct supervisor, Sarah, was incredibly supportive, always advocating for my advancement. She saw my potential and actively mentored me, helping me navigate the unspoken rules of corporate politics. I was grateful for her guidance, believing she was a true ally in my journey. I envisioned a long and fulfilling career at Sterling, perhaps even reaching the executive level someday. The company had become more than just a workplace. It was a significant part of my identity. I had invested so much of myself, my time, my energy, into its growth and success. I often thought about the future, about inspiring other young Black professionals to pursue their ambitions in corporate America. My story, I hoped, would be a beacon of what was possible through hard work and determination. I truly believed in the meritocracy Sterling claimed to uphold. Over the years, I built strong relationships with clients and internal teams. I became known for my problem-solving skills and my calm demeanor under pressure. I was the person people came to when they needed a fresh perspective or a difficult challenge tackled head-on. I celebrated every small victory, every successful quarter, every positive client feedback. These moments reinforced my belief that I was exactly where I was meant to be. I was contributing meaningfully, and my efforts were recognized and rewarded. As I approached my 10th anniversary, I felt a sense of accomplishment and anticipation. I was a seasoned professional, a leader, and I looked forward to the next chapter of my career at Sterling. I had dedicated a full decade of my life to this company. I was preparing for my annual performance review, confident in my contributions, and eager to discuss my future growth opportunities. I had a list of new initiatives I wanted to propose, ideas that I believed would further elevate Sterling's market position. Little did I know, the landscape was about to shift dramatically beneath my feet. The foundation I thought was so solid was about to crack, revealing a truth I had subconsciously ignored for far too long. My decade of dedication was about to be redefined. The meeting with the company president, Mr. Harrison, was scheduled for the following week. I assumed it was a routine check-in, perhaps even a discussion about a new, more prominent role. I was completely unprepared for what was truly awaiting me. Looking back, the subtle signs were always there, like faint whispers I chose to ignore. They were easy to dismiss as isolated incidents, quirks of corporate culture, or simply misunderstandings. I wanted to believe in the best intentions of my colleagues and leaders. There were times when my ideas, initially overlooked in a meeting, would later be praised when presented by a white male colleague. I'd feel a pang of frustration, but then rationalize it as a matter of timing or presentation style. I told myself to speak louder next time. I noticed I was often assigned to projects focused on diversity or urban markets, even when my expertise spanned much broader areas. While I value those assignments, It felt like I was being subtly pigeonholed, my skills confined to a specific demographic. During team social events, I often felt like an outsider, struggling to connect with conversations about golf or exclusive country clubs. My attempts to share aspects of my own culture or experiences were sometimes met with polite, but distant, smiles. It was a quiet disconnect. I remember one instance during a brainstorming session where I suggested a bold, unconventional approach. A senior director, Mr. Davies, chuckled and said, "That's a very colorful idea, Leah. Perhaps we should stick to what's tried and true for now." The word colorful lingered. Another time, a new intern, fresh out of business school, was introduced as a future leader after just a few months, despite having less experience and fewer tangible results than I had at that stage. I wondered if my path was inherently different. I would sometimes hear offhand comments about my articulate speech or my professional appearance, as if these were surprising qualities for someone like me. These backhanded compliments chipped away at my confidence, making me feel perpetually under scrutiny. There were also the moments when I was mistaken for other Black employees, even those in completely different departments. It was a minor inconvenience, but it highlighted a lack of individual recognition, a feeling of being seen as a collective rather than an individual. I tried to brush these incidents aside, focusing on my work and my performance metrics. I believed that my results would ultimately speak for themselves, that excellence would transcend any unspoken biases. I clung to the idea of a fair and just system. My mentor, Sarah, would sometimes acknowledge these subtle dynamics, advising me to play the game and pick my battles. She meant well, but her advice often felt like a concession to an unfair reality rather than a strategy for true equality. I saw other colleagues, particularly white men, advance with seemingly less effort, their mistakes overlooked, their potential amplified. It was a stark contrast to the constant pressure I felt to be flawless, to always prove my worth beyond doubt. I often felt a quiet exhaustion, a weariness from constantly code-switching and self-monitoring. I had to be careful not to be too assertive or too emotional, stereotypes I desperately wanted to avoid reinforcing. It was an unspoken burden. Despite these undercurrents, I remained fiercely loyal to Sterling. I had invested so much, and I genuinely loved the work. I convinced myself that these were minor hurdles, part of the journey, and that my perseverance would eventually overcome them. I believed that if I just worked harder, achieved more, and remained impeccably professional, I could break through any invisible barriers. My optimism was a shield against the creeping suspicion that something deeper was at play. The decade mark was approaching, and I was still holding on to the dream. I was still believing that my talent and dedication would be the only factors that mattered in my career trajectory at Sterling Innovations. I was about to be proven wrong. The day of the meeting with Mr. Harrison arrived, crisp and cold, much like the news I was about to receive. I walked into his spacious corner office, feeling a mix of anticipation and slight nervousness. He sat behind his large mahogany desk, his expression unreadable. Mr. Harrison, a man in his late 50s with a perpetually calm demeanor, gestured for me to sit. His usual warm smile was absent, replaced by a somber formality that immediately put me on edge. My carefully prepared notes for my performance review felt suddenly irrelevant. "Aaliyah," he began, his voice even, "thank you for coming in. We need to discuss your role here at Sterling." My heart began to pound. This wasn't the usual opening for a performance review. A knot of dread tightened in my stomach. He continued, "The company is undergoing some strategic restructuring. We're looking to streamline operations and realign our talent with new market demands." His words were corporate jargon, hollow and impersonal, offering no real explanation. He spoke of evolving needs and future-proofing our teams. He mentioned my valuable contributions over the past decade in a tone that felt rehearsed, devoid of genuine appreciation. It was clear he was reading from a script. Then came the blow. "As part of this restructuring, we've made the difficult decision to eliminate your position." The words hung in the air, heavy and final. My mind reeled, struggling to process what I was hearing. Eliminate my position. I felt a sudden chill, despite the warmth of the office. A decade of my life, my hard work, my loyalty, dismissed in a few sterile sentences. I wanted to interrupt, to demand an explanation, but my voice seemed to catch in my throat. He slid a severance package agreement across the table, outlining terms that felt like an insult. "We appreciate your understanding during this transition, Aaliyah. This is a business decision, purely strategic." He emphasized purely strategic, but as he spoke, my mind flashed back to all the subtle slights, the overlooked ideas, the feeling of being an outsider. The colorful comment, the mistaken identities, the constant need to overperform. It all clicked into place with chilling clarity. I looked at Mr. Harrison, searching his eyes for any sign of genuine regret or discomfort. There was none, only a practiced professionalism, a detached politeness that made the dismissal feel even colder. He was simply doing his job. "Mr. Harrison," I finally managed, my voice a little shaky. "I've dedicated 10 years to this company. My performance reviews have always been excellent. My campaigns have consistently driven revenue. What exactly are these new market demands that suddenly make my role obsolete?" He cleared his throat, avoiding my gaze. "It's not about your performance, Aaliyah. It's about a shift in focus. We're moving in a different direction, a more homogeneous direction for our core leadership." The word homogeneous hung in the air. That was it. That was the real reason. Not restructuring, not market demands. It was my skin color. It was the unspoken truth that had always lingered beneath the surface, now laid bare in his carefully chosen corporate speak. A wave of anger, hot and sharp, washed over me. Not just for myself, but for every Black professional who had ever faced this invisible wall. It wasn't about my skills. It was about their comfort, their preference for a homogeneous leadership. I stood up, pushing the severance papers back towards him. "I understand, Mr. Harrison," I said, my voice now steady, laced with a quiet defiance. "I understand perfectly." I turned and walked out, leaving him in his pristine, homogeneous office. The walk out of Sterling Innovations felt surreal, like moving through a dream. The familiar faces in the hallways, the buzz of activity, all seemed distant and muffled. I clutched my small box of personal items, a decade of my life reduced to a few trinkets. Once outside, the cold Chicago wind hit me, a stark reminder of the harsh reality. The initial shock began to wear off, replaced by a profound sense of betrayal and injustice. 10 years. 10 years of dedication, dismissed without a genuine reason. I found myself sitting on a park bench, staring blankly at the bustling city. Tears welled up, hot and stinging, not just from sadness, but from a deep, simmering rage. How could they do this? How could they be so dismissive of my worth? My phone buzzed with messages from Sarah, who had clearly just found out. She expressed shock and regret, promising to call later. Her words felt hollow, a small comfort against the gaping wound of dismissal. The more I thought about Mr. Harrison's words, a more homogeneous direction, the clearer the picture became. It wasn't just about me. It was about a systemic issue, a preference for a certain look, a certain background at the top. Every microaggression, every overlooked idea, every subtle exclusion now made perfect, painful sense. They weren't isolated incidents. They were threads in a larger tapestry of bias, carefully woven to maintain a status quo. I remembered the countless times I had to work twice as hard to prove myself, to overcome preconceived notions. I had to be exceptional just to be considered good, while others were praised for simply being present. The feeling of being othered had always been there, a quiet hum beneath the surface of my professional life. Now, it was a roaring siren, impossible to ignore. My skin color, a part of my identity, had become a barrier. The initial impulse was to retreat, to nurse my wounds in private. The humiliation was immense. But then, a different emotion began to stir within me, a fierce determination not to let this define me. This wasn't just a personal setback, it was a systemic issue that needed to be addressed. My story, I realized, was not unique. Countless others had faced similar dismissals, often without understanding the true underlying reasons. I thought of my parents, who had instilled in me the values of perseverance and speaking truth to power. They had always taught me to stand tall, even when the world tried to diminish me. Their voices echoed in my mind. The anger began to transform into resolve. I wouldn't let Sterling Innovations, or Mr. Harrison, have the last word. This dismissal, painful as it was, would not be the end of my story. It would be a catalyst, I picked up my phone, my fingers trembling slightly as I typed a message to Sarah. "Thank you for your support. I'm taking some time to process, but I won't be silent about this. My story matters." The echoes of injustice were loud, but they were also a call to action. I knew I had to channel this pain, this anger, into something productive, something that could help others avoid a similar fate. My decade at Sterling might have ended abruptly, but my journey was far from over. This was not a defeat, it was a redirection. I was about to embark on a path far more meaningful than any corporate ladder could offer. The days following my dismissal were a blur of emotions, but amidst the hurt, a sense of clarity began to emerge. I realized that reclaiming my voice was the most crucial step, not just for my healing, but for my future. I started by reaching out to my closest friends and family, sharing the raw truth of what happened. Their unwavering support was a lifeline, reminding me that my worth was not tied to a corporate title or someone else's narrow perception. One evening, my cousin, Maya, a community organizer, listened patiently to my story. "Aaliyah," she said, "your experience isn't just yours. It's a pattern, and patterns need to be exposed, not hidden." Her words resonated deeply. I began journaling, pouring out my thoughts, frustrations, and the subtle instances of bias I had previously overlooked. The act of writing was cathartic, helping me to connect the dots and solidify my understanding of the systemic issues at play. I also sought professional guidance, connecting with a career coach specializing in transitions for professionals of color. She affirmed my feelings, validating that my experience was not an isolated incident, but a common narrative in corporate spaces. "Your talent was never the issue, Aaliyah," she told me. "The issue was their inability, or unwillingness, to truly embrace diversity at the highest levels. Your brilliance challenged their comfort zone." Her words were empowering. I started researching organizations dedicated to racial equity in the workplace. I devoured articles, studies, and personal accounts of others who had faced similar discrimination. I realized I was part of a larger community, not alone in my struggle. This research fueled my resolve. I decided that my next step wouldn't just be about finding another job. It would be about creating a space where my voice and the voices of others could truly thrive without constraint. I began to network differently, seeking out individuals and companies that genuinely champion diversity and inclusion, not just as buzzwords, but as core values. I wanted to be in an environment where I was valued for all of who I was. I also started attending virtual workshops on entrepreneurship and nonprofit development. The idea of building something of my own, something that aligned with my values, began to take root. It felt daunting, yet exhilarating. The pain of the dismissal was still present, but it was slowly being overshadowed by a burgeoning sense of purpose. I was transforming my anger into action, my hurt into a powerful drive for change. I envisioned a platform, a resource, for professionals of color navigating similar challenges. A place for mentorship, advocacy, and shared experiences. It was a big idea, but I felt a renewed energy to pursue it. My conversations with Maya became more frequent, evolving from emotional support to strategic planning. She had the expertise in community building that I needed, and together we began to sketch out the framework for my new venture. Reclaiming my voice meant speaking my truth, but it also meant building a future where my truth, and the truth of others, could be heard and respected. I was no longer just an employee, I was becoming an advocate. This was not just about overcoming a personal setback, it was about contributing to a larger movement for justice and equity. My dismissal, though painful, had inadvertently set me on a path to a far greater purpose. With renewed purpose, I began the daunting, yet exhilarating, task of building my own table. I decided to launch Elevate and Thrive, a nonprofit organization dedicated to empowering professionals of color in corporate environments. It was a huge undertaking. My initial capital came from my severance package and personal savings, a testament to years of careful financial planning. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but I was determined to turn my painful experience into a catalyst for positive change. I started small, working from my home office, fueled by countless cups of coffee and an unshakable belief in my mission. Maya joined me as a co-founder, bringing her invaluable experience in community outreach and program development. Our first step was to create a robust online platform, a safe space for sharing stories, resources, and advice. We wanted to build a community where professionals could find solidarity and practical tools to navigate workplace challenges. We hosted our first virtual workshop on navigating microaggressions, and the response was overwhelming. People from across the country shared their experiences, expressing relief at finally finding a place where they felt seen and understood. I leveraged my marketing expertise to build our brand, creating compelling content that resonated with our target audience. My skills, once used to sell products, were now dedicated to promoting empowerment and equity. The learning curve was steep. We faced challenges with funding, outreach, and building a sustainable model. But every hurdle felt like an opportunity to learn and grow, reinforcing my resilience. We started a mentorship program, connecting experienced professionals with emerging talent. The stories of impact, of men's gaining confidence, and navigating difficult situations filled me with immense pride. I found a new kind of fulfillment, one that far surpassed any corporate promotion. My work now had a direct, tangible impact on people's lives, helping them to not just survive, but to truly thrive. My network expanded rapidly, but this time, it was built on shared values and genuine connection, not corporate hierarchy. I met incredible leaders, advocates, and allies who believed in our mission as passionately as I did. I also started speaking at industry conferences, sharing my personal story of dismissal and the systemic issues it exposed. My voice, once silenced, was now amplified, reaching audiences far beyond what I could have imagined at Sterling. It was liberating to speak my truth, to call out injustice without fear of reprisal. The vulnerability of sharing my experience was met with empathy and a collective desire for change. The growth of Elevate and Thrive was organic, fueled by the urgent need it addressed. We started receiving grants from foundations committed to diversity, equity, and inclusion, validating our work and expanding our reach. Building my own table meant I no longer had to fight for a seat at someone else's. I was creating a space where everyone who deserved a seat, regardless of their background, could find one. This new path was challenging, but it was authentically mine. It was a testament to the power of resilience, the strength found in community, and the profound impact of turning pain into purpose. As Elevate and Thrive gained momentum, its ripple effect began to spread far beyond our initial community. Our workshops grew, our mentorship programs expanded, and our advocacy efforts started to influence corporate policies. We launched a corporate accountability index, rating companies on their diversity and inclusion practices based on transparent data and employee feedback. This initiative put pressure on corporations to genuinely commit to equity, not just pay lip service. I found myself increasingly in demand as a speaker, invited to address C-suite executives and HR leaders at major corporations. I shared my story, not as a victim, but as a testament to the urgent need for systemic change. I spoke about the subtle biases, the homogeneous leadership, and the cost of overlooking talent due to race. My message was clear. True diversity isn't just a moral imperative, it's a business necessity for innovation and growth. Some executives were initially defensive, but many listened, genuinely receptive to the insights we provided. We offered practical solutions, training programs, and strategies for creating truly inclusive workplaces. Our work led to tangible changes in several companies, from revised hiring practices to the implementation of anti-bias training programs. It was incredibly rewarding to see our efforts translate into real-world impact. We partnered with legal aid organizations to offer pro bono advice to professionals facing discrimination. We wanted to ensure that no one felt alone or powerless when confronting workplace injustice. The media took notice. We were featured in prominent business publications and news outlets, amplifying our message to an even wider audience. Our story became a beacon of hope for many. I often reflected on my time at Sterling, realizing that my dismissal, though devastating, had been the necessary catalyst for this profound journey. It had forced me to step into my true power. My experience allowed me to connect with others on a deeper level, to understand their struggles with empathy, and provide guidance born from lived experience. I was no longer just a marketer, I was a changemaker. The community we built was vibrant and supportive, a testament to the strength found in unity. Professionals of color were connecting, sharing, and uplifting each other, creating a powerful collective voice. I saw young professionals, once discouraged by systemic barriers, find renewed hope and confidence through our programs. They were not just surviving, they were thriving, breaking barriers, and building their own legacies. The ripple effect was truly inspiring. It was a testament to the idea that one person's painful experience, when channeled with purpose, could spark a movement for widespread positive change. I never sought revenge against Sterling or Mr. Harrison. My focus was on building something better, something that would prevent others from experiencing the same injustice. My success was my greatest response. This journey taught me that true power lies not in titles or corporate ladders, but in the ability to create impact, to uplift others, and to stand firm in your truth, no matter the cost. Years passed, and Elevate and Thrive grew into a nationally recognized organization, a leading voice in workplace equity. My name, Aaliyah, became synonymous with advocacy and empowerment. I stood on stages, not as an employee seeking validation, but as a leader shaping the future of work. My story, once a source of pain, was now a powerful narrative of resilience and transformation. I often thought about Mr. Harrison and Sterling Innovations. I heard through the grapevine that Sterling had faced increasing scrutiny regarding their diversity practices, particularly after our corporate accountability index gained traction. Their homogeneous leadership, I learned, had led to a decline in innovation and a struggle to attract top diverse talent. The very thing they valued had become their undoing, proving that true strength lies in diversity. One day, I received an unexpected email. It was from Sterling Innovations, inviting me to speak at their annual leadership summit on building an inclusive future. I almost laughed. The irony was palpable. I consulted with Maya and our board. We decided it was an opportunity, not for personal vindication, but for systemic impact. I accepted the invitation on the condition that I could speak freely about my experiences. Walking back into Sterling's headquarters felt different. I was no longer the dismissed employee. I was an invited expert, a leader in my own right. The security guard, who had once given me a pitying look, greeted me with respect. Mr. Harrison approached me before my speech, his face etched with a mix of awkwardness and a hint of something that looked like regret. "Aaliyah," he said, "it's good to see you. You've certainly made an impact." I met his gaze, calm and confident. "Yes, Mr. Harrison, I have. And I'm here today to ensure that no one else has to experience what I did to find their purpose." There was no anger, just a quiet, firm truth. My speech was powerful, raw, and unapologetic. I shared my journey, from the initial optimism to the crushing dismissal, and finally, to the creation of Elevate and Thrive. I spoke about the homogeneous direction and its real-world consequences. The room, filled with Sterling's senior leadership, was silent. I saw some faces shift uncomfortably, others nod in recognition. It wasn't about blame, it was about accountability and a call to action. I ended my speech with a message of hope and responsibility. "Your organization has a choice," I told them. "You can continue to operate in a homogeneous direction, or you can truly embrace diversity, not as a quota, but as your greatest strength." Leaving Sterling that day, I felt a profound sense of closure. My journey had come full circle. I had not only reclaimed my voice, but had used it to challenge the very system that had tried to silence me. My legacy wasn't just about my own success. It was about the countless lives we had touched, the barriers we had helped dismantle, and the more equitable future we were actively building. I had learned that true power isn't given, it's taken. It's built from resilience, fueled by purpose, and amplified by a community united in the pursuit of justice. My dismissal was not an ending, but the most powerful beginning. I knew the real reason was my skin color. My dismissal was not an ending, but the most powerful beginning. I built my own table, and now I'm helping others find their seats.